I got it now. That should go off.
Good afternoon, welcome. It's Thursday, January 11th, 2024. We're in Senate committees on institutions. And we have the pleasure of having Mr. Mike Farrant here, who does a great duty with us here in the State House, but he wishes to have more endeavors, and there's going to be an open position for the Sergeant of Arms, and Mike has announced as a candidate, so welcome.
Thank you very much. Mike Farrant from Williamstown, Vermont.
Yep, nice. So glad to have you here, and floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I submitted a letter that kind of outlines my qualifications, but also my ambitions and what I think transcribes or translates well from my history to the position of Sergeant at Arms. So you have that, you've read it, you can read it whenever you want, but I wanted to use this opportunity to talk about what this means to me as a person. So I did some history reading, and it turns out that the term Sergeant at Arms comes from the 14th century, from 1415 in the British Commons. The king had to be away too much from the castle for his liking, so he appointed a retired soldier to watch over and keep order of the castle in his absence. And that was the first known reference of the term Sergeant at Arms. And the position has stood ever since as a guardian of the house of the people, of the people's house. And so I think that's come through the centuries really well, and it means a lot here in Vermont, the people's house, being a steward of it all year round, not just when the legislature's in session, during the summer concert series, during the fall school group tours and bus tours that come here. And then of course, when the General Assembly is in session, that's the most busy time of the year here. To have the opportunity to serve in that position, to oversee the PAGE program, the Doorkeepers program, the Capitol Police, is a real honor and something that I feel I could do well from day one, and something I would look forward to doing for the next 20 to 30 years of my life. Really, I feel like this is it. This is the niche. This is what I've been looking for. And so I'm gonna campaign and put my best foot forward to win that election on March 1st when that happens, and then to really carry out the duties and really see the construction that's going to happen to this building, the renovations that are going to happen to this building carefully over the next couple of decades is what I would like to see. This place is going to change. It has since I started working here, but I've seen some of the construction plans and some of the longer term visions from Freeman, French Freeman, and VGS, and it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a careful, steady presence of somebody overseeing that to really have it be successful.
So you came to the State House when? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure.
Your path here, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I started working here in 2017. I originally applied for and was hired as the committee services supervisor. And then quickly became the deputy director of operations under the Office of Legislative Counsel. Before the pandemic, we had started talking about restructuring the staff offices here because things had organically grown up through over the years. Like the Office of IT and the Office of Operations were all under the Office of Legislative Counsel. And I think that's just because that's where they'd matured and that's where they grew up through. So we did a lot of work and a lot of testimony and a lot of discussions about new staff offices and an HR office, an independent IT office, and then an independent operations office. And I participated in those pretty actively. It was actually on the final day of 2020's COVID session in Zoom that Act 144, which put all of this into motion, took effect and was voted on and went into effect. And so since then, I've been the director of legislative operations with our own office of committee assistance, accounts payable, receivable, payroll, and expense reimbursement, everyone's favorite thing. Before that, though, I worked at the lottery as the security director. I'm going to rewind a little bit. I went to college for psychology. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology. I wanted to help people. I wanted to help the world. I got a job in Northeast Human Services, working with people with severe mental illness, schizophrenia, severe bipolar disorder, in a program called CRT. So when they shut down the state hospital in Vermont, they created this program called CRT so that people that would normally have been in the state hospital, mental hospital, would have community supports. And so I worked as a case manager in that program. It was very overwhelming. It was very rewarding, but I really enjoyed it. In 2001, I was working there and 9/11 occurred, and I was a member of the Army Reserves as a construction engineer. And things changed. The game changed for the Army Reserves and for the Army, but for the Army Reserves and the Army National Guard, 9/11 really changed the game. You know, we were weekend warriors before then, and then all of a sudden we were expected to actually go and be in combat situations, supporting active duty soldiers. And so in 2002, I was given 4 days notice and put on 400-day orders to go to Iraq. We went to Kuwait and we built a bunch of makeshift camps and then deployed forward with the invasion of Iraq in 2002. We ended up in Najaf, which is just near what was Mesopotamia back in the day, where the Tigris and Euphrates meet. We did a lot of construction work there. We built a road in Veery towards the Garden of Eden. And it really hit me hard that I was in this very sacred place doing this very important work that was for the good of the people, but also in a very delicate manner. And that really came to light as the insurgency picked up, and we left in 2004. I came back very different and didn't want to keep pursuing a case manager job at Northeast Human Services anymore. I just didn't want to really do that. I wanted to do something more. And there was an ad in the paper for a Boys and Girls Club director. They were starting up a new club in Lisbon, New Hampshire. I had gone to one as a kid, grown up in one pretty much as a kid, and it just felt like that was what I wanted to do, what I needed to do. So I went and applied and was hired, and the club didn't have a lot of kids. They had 5 kids that would go every day after school. And I said, this is not how it should be. And so we got our own facility. And long story short, over the next 5 years, we ended up having over 70 kids per day at that club. And today, to this day, it still exists. Mm-hmm. They have almost 100 kids a day being served through that after school and during summer camps. And I just fell in love with working with kids. I really did. I really enjoyed that youth mentorship role. In 2010, my unit got orders that we were going to Afghanistan. I knew it was going to be at least 15 months that I would be gone. The job I was doing at the Boys and Girls Club, I was the only full-time staff member there. It was all volunteers and part-time after school. And so I knew that that job needed someone to own it all the time, not for a year and a half while I was gone. So I made the decision to resign early on when I got my orders. And then I hired and trained my successor there before departing. It was the right thing to do. When I got back from Afghanistan, where I ran operations and I was in charge of our battalion commander's personal security detail, when I got back, I was unemployed. And I thought, well, I just got a Bronze Star. I have all this experience, a bachelor's degree. I'll just find a job. That was not easy at all. At one point, I had about 82 applications out, and I was doing interviews as much as I could, but I wasn't finding anything. I wasn't finding any jobs. I worked as a substitute teacher to provide for my family, where I got to see the insides of schools and what goes on in there, and that was very eye-opening for me. And I applied to be the director of security for the lottery. And the executive director at the time, Greg Smith, gave me a call. We had a discussion. And he offered me the job, and at that point, I really needed a job, and I really wanted to do it. And so I went there, and I did that. It was an interesting juxtaposition of security from Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, it was win the hearts and minds. It was heavy combat operations. It was tactical construction operations. It's very different. At the lottery, it was much more behind the scenes, much more subdued and a lot less public, but equally just as important. And so I really found my niche there. I did things that were recognized nationally from other lotteries, practices that other lotteries started picking up. And but when I missed leading people, and I had 2 staff members that ran the warehouse, and then it was just me, and they were fine. They didn't need supervision. So I got kind of bored. And so I saw this job for the General Assembly, and I just said, I need to lead people and I need to work in that building. And so I came here. And I've been here ever since, and I've loved it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Mike, I want to compliment you, in the years that I've been here and you've been here, you and I have interacted to some degree, and it generally has to do with getting paid.
Yeah.
And you've always been very, very responsive if I had an issue with, putting my expenses in or something. And so you've done a great job there. I think with the exception of Senator Mazza, I've been here longer than the other three, and you actually, because I was here at 15. And we had, and I don't remember whether it was the State of the State or the budget address when Governor Shumlin was reelected. We had a situation, we had a joint assembly where there were protesters who had unfurled banners from the balcony and were yelling and screaming. I don't even remember. I think they were probably not happy that he had announced that the universal health insurance thing wasn't going to go through because it was just too much money. And it became obvious to me, there's quite a lot of state police presence there and sheriffs and local law enforcement, but we also had the Capitol Police, and nobody seemed to know what to do about it at the time. It was really sort of unsettling in a way. Janet wasn't there yet. Francis Brooks was the sergeant at arms at the time. And in, I guess, many ways, it cost him his job later because he was relieved, and then he ran for the Senate and won. So it was kind of a strange, it was a strange sort of thing. But anyway, as I understand the function of should you win the election, your job would be, you're in charge of the doorkeepers and the Capitol Police.
Correct.
Are those the two main things that you would be responsible for as Sergeant at Arms, or are there other things I'm not thinking about?
The Capitol Complex security. So in the statute, the Sergeant at Arms is responsible for order and security within the State House.
Okay.
Outside of the State House is BGS security is responsible for that. So it's really everything within the doors here. And so that relationship is going to be really important. The doorkeepers, the Capitol Police, the general order of the building are the main responsibilities, yes.
Okay. And it was obvious that at the time, like, a state cop wanted to do something, but the Capitol Police guy, and it was sort of, nobody really knew what to do. This hadn't happened before that I can remember. Right. And I mean, luckily there was no violence, and they were escorted out, and life went on. But I just wanted to make sure I understood the functions of the job. And again, I appreciate all the things that you've done for me personally since I got up here. And I'll show that I read this. Zoe and Nancy are your two dogs. So I didn't remember that much.
They're wonderful. To that point, it was a few years back, I think it was pre-pandemic. We were doing a public hearing in the House chamber. I think it was on firearms legislation.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Yeah.
And there was a group of there was a group of opponents to the change who all had little American flags. And the public hearing rules were no clapping, no applause after people speak in support of to respect the process. Well, all of the folks in the balcony would wave their little flags and create a little roar each time they liked what was said, and they wouldn't do it when they didn't like what was said. And I think their point was really clear. Are you going to tell us not to wave our American flags in the people's house? Right? Very crafty, very slick, very smart. Of course, they have a right to wave a flag in the people's house, and the people speaking have a right to speak without interruption. And I think that's where it really boils down to is everyone here has their own rights to their own freedoms within the walls. And I think the Sergeant at Arms needs to enforce that as a universal thing. Everyone has the right to come through the doors. Everyone has a right to be accessible and be heard here. And that means you can't infringe on others' rights to do that as well. I think that's really important. But, I don't know how I would have handled that. I think Janet handled it with grace. I think she did really well. And the chairs of those committees that were running the public hearing handled it really well.
I do have to skip down the hall at 2,
No problem.
but,
I'll also say that the short time that I've been here, that you've been nothing but gracious and helpful, and you know, a lot can be said. Without naming names, and of course I would never do that, but I always found it kind of funny. I actually mentioned it the other day that you know, there's a lot of people in this building that you don't interact with, but boy, when they want to interact with you, you're their best friend. But then you go right back to being not much. And I can't say that about you. Even when we didn't interact, you know, I appreciate the hi and the smile and the you know, your friendly manner. You know, that's always appreciated. It's kind of how I like to live my life as well. Always be decent, and you know, you never know when you're going to make an impression on somebody, and it's always nice to make a good impression versus a bad impression. But you know, I'm very appreciative of what you've done so far, and I've always found any interactions that I've had and needed help with the payroll, the getting paid and stuff like that, great. But also just the day-to-day interactions, very much appreciated.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. Audie Murphy, who's one of my heroes, used to say, when you lead from the front.
Yeah.
And that was his quote that I've always remembered. I tried to live my life that way, and every job I've had, I tried to lead from the front. I staff committees, some of the most important committees. When there's a public hearing, I am in the front row, running that show as much as I can. You'll see me in the lounge, taking a knee next to somebody, helping them with their expenses, calling them at home that night if I haven't seen them and submit them. You lead from the front. And as Sergeant at Arms, I promise I will lead from the front.
Yeah, just a couple of questions just about the jobs themselves. You know, you have been tremendously helpful, and attitude is huge. So who do you report to now in your current job?
The Joint Legislative Management Committee.
Okay, so then the Sergeant at Arms, who do they report to?
The Joint Legislative Management Committee.
So you're parallel essentially, or?
Yes, the Joint Rules Committee also has jurisdiction, and the
Okay.
House and Senate Rules Committees have jurisdiction over the Sergeant at Arms.
Okay.
So a few more folks to answer to. Some of those folks overlap and are
Okay.
on multiple committees, but that's the general structure.
Okay, so how many employees do you have at this point?
24.
Okay, 24, and so that's the IT folks?
No.
Not
So it's me, Lindsay Fryer, who's the administrative assistant in charge of payroll for the
Okay.
most part. Charlene Dindo, who's our operations coordinator, pays all of your bills, does expense coordination as
Right.
well. And then the supervisor of committee services and the 20 committee assistants that
Okay.
fall under that.
Which they do a wonderful job.
They do.
I wish they were full-time, honestly, because it's pretty hard to hire people who are just this period of time. And then how many folks report to the Sergeant at Arms?
Currently, right now, it's between 18 and 20, depending on the Capitol Police Force and how many officers they have.
Okay, so similar. Okay,
So
all right.
size and scope.
And they're both year-round, I'm sure, right?
Both of the positions.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anything else?
And we'll have plenty of time to talk to you before.
Yep.
March
Well,
1.
we appreciate what you do today, and we appreciate you coming in, and we appreciate your aspirations. And to be fair, we'll interview with the other candidate as well, and we're all just individual people. That's all we are. But we just thought because of the importance of you know, the role that you're taking, wish to take on, and it's kind of what our role is in the committee. It'd be very important to sit down with you for a moment, and as Senator Harrison said, we'll sure be in conversations with you further on. But really appreciate you coming in today and taking the time, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yep.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Michael. Yep. So cool. I think now, committee, I just want to take, you got just a few more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to just take a minute. Mike, would you leave that door open for us?
Yes.
Thank you.
I want to take a walk.